Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you today. And as I just said, if you're joining us, please do write in the chat where you're connecting from, your country, your organization, your title, if you'd like. My name is Karim El-Bayar, and I'm the program coordinator of the OCHA UNDP supported Connecting Business Initiative, or CBi. If you don't already know us, CBi works with local businesses and private sector networks around the world before, during, and after emergencies, in order to strategically engage with the private sector and facilitate partnerships between the private sector and the United Nations system. I know that we have with us today people from all over the world: Cote d'Ivoire, Fiji, Indonesia, Philippines, China, the US, the United Kingdom. It's really wonderful to see how many of you are represented here today. Thank you very much for joining this session. At CBi, we're committed to catalyzing peer-to-peer learning for business networks, for small, medium, and micro enterprises, as well as large national companies and international companies. And today, we're really all about taking a look at business continuity and resilience. We are thinking today about not why it's important. We assume that if you're here, you already know that it's important to maintain your operations during a crisis and to have processes and procedures in place before a crisis to ensure that you're able to maintain business continuity. So I think everyone here is already clear about the importance of investing in business continuity. Instead, I'd like to just say a few very brief words highlighting the course that we're going to be launching today. We're going to be hearing from a fantastic group of speakers from around the world, but the purpose of today's call is really to launch this new business continuity course, which is slightly different, I think, and I hope, although it's complementary to other existing resources on this topic. We know that there are resources on this topic like the Resilience in a Box program, to name just one example, a resource that was developed by our colleagues at the UPS Foundation, the U.S. Agency for International Development, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. But we are launching today a new business continuity learning journey. And what we're trying to do here is to feature best practices from CBi member networks around the world, talking about how they have implemented business continuity plans for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in their countries. The course content that we're going to be discussing today was developed by the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, or PDRF, one of the founding CBi member networks. They have more than a decade of boots on the ground experience around disaster risk reduction and disaster management for the private sector, and especially around supporting small businesses. Our webinar today and the business continuity course that my colleague Nara will be giving an overview of later today are chock full of practical examples and insights, because our goal is to provide you with the knowledge and tools that you need to better prepare your business for crises. The course that we're launching today also offers a curated list of other resources, because we strive to amplify existing material and not duplicate efforts, but rather bring to the fore some of the best practices from around the world. The training that we're launching is for small businesses, but it's also for private sector networks who work with small businesses. And we do hope that after the meeting today, after our session today, you'll sign up for the course and join our community of business continuity practitioners so that you can learn from one another too. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our brilliant moderator today, Ms. Trina Aspuria from PDRF. Trina, over to you.
Thanks, Karim. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us in this webinar. My name is Ana Katrina Aspuria. I'm head of programs at the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. I'll be your moderator, and it's a pleasure to welcome everyone to today's session on getting your business ready for crisis, an introduction to the free online training on business continuity. This webinar, as mentioned, is organized by the Connecting Business Initiative and the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. Before we begin, a few housekeeping. Everyone is on mute by default. Feel free to use the chat box for comments and the Q&A for questions throughout our session. So to start us off, we'd like to test the temperatures first with a quick poll. It should flash on your screen any second now. There. So for those who just joined us, welcome. We can leave it for a few seconds because we have a few more questions. Okay. So I think we have 100% response now, and we can move to the second question. Okay, have you engaged in business continuity planning in the past? So our conversation throughout the session will be revolving around MSME resilience and business continuity. So it would be nice to know if our audience are very involved, not so much or quite often. So I think a few more questions or a few more seconds, and we have our last question for the poll, which I think everyone is requested to answer via the chat box because polls have limitations and we can't put a long answer using the polls. So what would you like to hear or learn during this session? For those who are just joining us now, feel free to drop in your name, your designation, and organization in the chat box so we can know from where our audience are logging in. So I'm seeing now a lot of responses to learn the best practices, to benchmark from other established groups, and to also look for useful tools and resources that can be used to plan DCPs. So feel free to keep those messages coming in. Our team will be reading them. But for the first two questions in the poll, Nara, can you share our results so that our audience can also know our responses or the team's responses? Okay. So we do have a lot of NGOs logging in, followed by members of the UN. Nice to see that we have government here, as well as definitely our partners from the MSME sector. For question number 2, can we move over to the results of that? All right. So majority said yes, but with limited knowledge on the topic. So thank you, everyone. Fantastic. Thank you for answering the poll. So now that we know more about our audience, let's get things going. So for those who tuned in to the different global platforms early this year, like the HNPW and the GPDRR, and to those who participated in the MSME Day last Monday, we would all agree on the common messaging that MSMEs are particularly vulnerable to disasters, and at the same time, critical for the broader resilience of communities they work in. But they are also disproportionately impacted by those crises. So as we optimistically move forward from the impacts of the pandemic, we are also seeing a K-shaped recovery where micro and small enterprises are mostly needing the assistance. Today, we are very fortunate to be with thought leaders from the 3 CBi Member Networks to share their work highlighting business continuity for MSMEs. And this is to increase the focus on risk prevention. This will be followed by a panel discussion to unpack challenges and recommendations on how we can support MSMEs. And later on, the highlight, which will be on sharing or Nara walking us through the details of the free online training for business continuity. So a packed event indeed. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Fania Joseph, the Executive Director of Ajerka. Ajerka is an independent non-government organization that provides a mechanism for the Haitian private sector to support the national system for risk and disaster management, and to enable businesses of all sizes to recover quickly and build forward better from crisis. Fania will be sharing on Ajerka's programs and activities to support MSMEs in Haiti as they apply business continuity principles. Fania, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Katrina. And I say hello to everybody. It is, as usual, it's a pleasure for me to be part of this panel to support this activity from CBi, PDRF, and also Ajerka. So I can say that Haiti, geographically, the location in the Caribbean is in the path of the Atlantic hurricane that makes the country particularly vulnerable in hydrometeorological disaster, especially between the month of June and November. So Haiti remains one of the most vulnerable countries worldwide to natural hazards, mainly hurricane, floods, earthquake, etc. More than 96% of the population is exposed to this type of shocks. Because of all this, in Haiti, at the emergency management level, we're always on alert. So I am Fania Joseph, the Executive Director of Ajerka. And can you share the slide? Perfect. The next slides, please. Thank you very much. So Ajerka is the Alliance for Risk Management and Business Continuity, and it was created in 2008 with the support of the PDRF in Haiti. And we were first operated under the aegis of AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce, and then with the Association of Industries of Haiti. And now we operate independently. So Ajerka is the focal point of the private sector and the civil society within the National Risk Disaster Management system. So we coordinate that, we do our coordination directly with the General Directorate of Civil Protection, and we support the system by promoting the public-private partnership in order to create a great synergy of sharing expertise in the field of disaster risk management. Ajerka is the focal point of the CBi, the Connecting Business Initiatives, and also ARISE, the Private Sector Alliance for Disaster Resilient Societies. Next slide. Thank you. So we have two missions. The first one is encouraging the businesses and the civil society communities to identify the risks to which they are exposed and to seek effective solution in order to avoid any definitive disruption in their functioning and their economic and social activities. And of course, we also promote the good practices in disaster risk management, and we coordinate response action of the private sector and the civil society, including now the diaspora. We've been working with the Haitian diaspora also since last year, and the event of a crisis or any natural disaster. So as part of our mission on the disaster risk management level, Ajerka operates at two levels. So upstream, Ajerka intervene in prevention, preparation, awareness to first fight against any disaster risk. And downstream, Ajerka coordinate the intervention of companies wishing to assist the population to any affected population by the disaster. Next slide. Thank you. So as a support of the private sector, of course, we do work with many institutions of the private sector. We work with member, and we also work with other companies that are maybe partners or non-members. we support the private sector with many activities, but I'm just gonna show you just a few activities that we do that is related directly to the business continuity planning. So the first one is training session that we regularly do with staff of the institution, and sometimes we also distribute awareness materials. We have a monthly newsletter with the latest information as well to everything related to business continuity and disaster risk management. We also have trainings on the family emergency plan that we usually do with the businesses and the community around the businesses, which is a very important point. And also we do simulation exercises. So most of the time we do that to just to test the BCP, the business continuity plan. We also do visits to the company. So we have the annual safety and security visits that we do, and we support the companies also to have their crisis unit. That's one of the action that we're actually doing now since last few weeks, and we implement their business continuity plan. So we support and the implementation of the business continuity plan with the companies, and we also have session of sharing experience and good practice in disaster risk management. So as of now, I think that everybody has an idea about the definition of a business continuity plan. So it is very important to know why the business continuity plan is very important. Next slide. So the business continuity plan can help, first of all, to ensure that your business can keep trading during and after an incident, and restart operation as soon as possible and minimize the cost of tackling business interruption. At the second level, it maintains residency in responding quickly to an intervention. Strong business continuity save money, time, and company reputation. Even a couple hours of lost operation can have multiple consequences depending on the company. If we take an example of telecommunication companies, just a few minutes or a few hours can have a very big impact on the companies in general. It also shortens the period of disruption and reduce the risk and effect of the risk on the business. Also, it assures the customers, the stakeholders, and the employees that the organization, the business, is capable of weathering disruption. It protects also the reputation, like I said, and reduce the risk and danger to your employees and customers. For instance, we can have like a retail shop or any wholesale company, for example. And it provides the company with a roadmap and processes that support the company and its strategy in time of any unexpected situation. Next slide. So as of testing the BCP, usually in Haiti, what we do with Ajerka, so we try to have the company have their evacuation plan, and after doing the business continuity plan with the company, so we make sure that we do test this business continuity plan. So how we do it, usually we have a simulation exercise with the support of the civil protection that always with us, which is our main partner. So in this simulation exercise, usually after the simulation exercise, we submit a list of recommendations to the company. That photo is an example. We're doing a tabletop simulation. So right after the tabletop simulation, we have a long list. Most of the time, we have a long list of recommendations that we share to the member, to the company, so they can update their business continuity plan. So for instance, after this session, this company had to review many pages of their plan since they did not choose, for example, the good key personnel and the backup site providers, which are very important on a business continuity plan. So most of the time, much effort goes into creating and initially testing the business continuity plan, but you should always make sure to review and improve regularly your business continuity plan, because it's very, very important for the company in general. So thank you very much for your attention, and it was a pleasure for me to be there with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fania. And Aside from the entire process of your BCP training that you conduct, I'd also like to highlight your work with the broader private sector in conducting awareness sessions for businesses and the communities around them, and how that is incorporated into the continuity plans. I think that's one of the best practice also that I picked up from that discussion. Now, to share the public-private support system for MSMEs and other relevant projects in the Philippines, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Veronica Gabaldon, Executive Director of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, the country's major private sector coordinator for disaster risk reduction and management, and a champion of MSME resilience. Over to you, Veron.
Thank you, Trina, and good day to everyone. Today I'll be talking about our MSME program. MSME stands for Micro and Small Medium Enterprises. I will be using that acronym for a couple of times throughout my presentation, right? So as mentioned by Trina, our organization was actually established in 2009 as an alliance of businesses dedicated to building the disaster management capabilities of the private sector in the country. PDRF is a DRR-focused nonprofit organization which provides a platform for cooperation among government and non-government organizations in carrying out initiatives and plans across the phases of the disaster management cycle. So considering the impact of disasters to critical assets and resources, especially in the Philippines, PDRF established our own business continuity and organizational resilience unit in 2016. Next slide, please. And next slide. I'm sorry, I forgot to say next slide. All right, okay. So this is our business continuity and organizational resilience, which has 3 pillars there, focusing on the member companies, which are composed mostly of large enterprises. And then we also have another pillar there, which focus on the micro and small medium enterprises. And around this sector, we created a robust BC program, which to focus on the micro and small medium enterprises in our country. They comprise 99.56% of businesses, and through capacity building and technical assistance, we created that program to support this sector, because in the Philippines, the MSME sector actually provides 62.85% employment to the labor force. Thus, we consider them as the lifeblood of our economy. In 2017, we provided also technical support to our government partners and co-developed the Public Service Continuity Program in partnership with the Office of Civil Defense, which is now being implemented in all levels of the government agencies as members of the NDMO Council, or we call it National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council. So this ecosystem of resilience in different sectors hopefully would translate to the reduction of socio-economic impact brought about by numerous disastrous events in our country. And to date, we have been regularly conducting business continuity trainings, not only for the micro and small medium enterprises, but also the public service version of the BCP all over the country. In the next slide, you will see photos from the last batches of trainees. We have conducted this just last week. Trina was there. That's in Dinagat Island and Bohol, and both areas have been severely impacted by the super typhoon Rai. Next slide. So having a BCP is just the start of your resilience journey. The plan needs to be implemented, reviewed, and tested. And to make sure that our dear MSMEs are properly guided throughout their journey towards resilience, we developed several tools to help them. So in this slide, you will see CCAP. This is a platform which we launched in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. So CCAP, or Synergizing Recovery Initiatives, Knowledge and Adaptation Practices for MSMEs, provide free resources, training, and mentorship opportunities for our entrepreneurs to boost their disaster resilience. So this program was developed with the support of the Connecting Business Initiative, the UN OCHA, and the UNDP, or UN Development Program. Next slide. We also developed a range of free tools for MSMEs to learn about business continuity in different ways. On the left side is the MSME guidebook, which is a product we developed with the National Resilience Core Group. So this is what we use when we conduct trainings, BCP trainings. At the center is a comic book. This comic book, we produced this again in the midst of the pandemic to tell a story of hope and resilience of the comic character. We call her Tina, an entrepreneur who was affected by the pandemic. It's an exciting and creative way to introduce BCP concepts and practices to enterprise owners. And lastly, on the rightmost side is a mobile app. We call it Katatagan in a Box, which is actually inspired by the UPS Foundation Resilience in a Box mobile app. So for our digital natives, you can now create your BCP using your mobile phones, and this is now available via Android and iOS. We are proud that these tools are not only informative, but also innovative, as we try to create content in different formats, taking into both form and function, from an exciting comic book to a cutting-edge mobile application. Next slide. Our tools don't only support the entrepreneurs, but also the enablers, such as government partners, in our case, from the Department of Trade and Industry, members of the academy, and other groups managing or interacting and supporting our micro and small medium enterprises. So last Monday, in celebration of the World MSME Day, we launched 2 of new tools. The disaster risk and disaster preparedness needs assessment tools and the business continuity capability assessment tool are practical checklists for micro and small medium enterprises to help them determine their readiness for different kinds of disruptions and to measure the effectiveness of having a business continuity plan. So MSME owners can use the needs assessment tool to gauge their vulnerability to disaster risks and ascertain their own needs in terms of knowledge, skills, and resources to avoid, reduce, or mitigate the impacts of disasters in their businesses. And the other tool, the checklist or the business continuity capability and readiness assessment checklist, will enable key actors in MSME resilience to assess and evaluate the quality of BCPs produced and the impact of programs and technical assistance provided. So this tool will also help the MSME resilience program enablers evaluate the capacity of the MSMEs from preparedness to recovery. And let's not forget today's main event, the launch of the business continuity training we developed with CBi. We are very proud of this training course, where we also shared success stories from Filipino MSMEs on how they were able to use business continuity to stay afloat or become resilient. Everyone on the team worked very hard on this course, and we hope that the knowledge shared here will be able to reach a wider audience now that we are launching it. I won't dwell too much on this, as Nara will later be walking us through how to access this course. So, and next slide. PDRF is part of the National MSME Resilience Core Group, a business public-private partnership, which was established in 2016, which aims to strengthen the disaster resilience of MSMEs in the Philippines through this national roadmap and action plan. And we have 4 thematic areas here that serve to support the MSMEs in the challenges they commonly encounter. So to date, the RCG has reached 17 regions in the country, paving the way to create local resilience core groups, which push for MSME development initiatives in their own provinces and communities. And later this July, we will be organizing our annual forum to present the updated roadmap to support MSMEs in the next 3 years. So that's it for PDRF, and I hope that you will be able to access these tools, which will be available or are now available in our website and in CCAP, which I just talked about a while ago. So thank you very much. Over to you, Trina.
Thanks, Veron. Great tools such as CCAP. It was pivoted from the pandemic and now being used for disaster recovery. The future is bright for that application. But feel free to drop the links to these resources so our audience can also access them later. and wonderful work on establishing the resilience core group between the government, CSOs, and the private sector. It shows how MSME resilience is a dynamic process that needs to constantly evolve and innovate. So thank you for sharing that. Now, moving on to share on Turkconfed's programs to support MSMEs, let's hear from Mr. Erhan Arslan, Deputy Secretary General of the Turkish Enterprise and Business Confederation, or Turkconfed. It is a non-partisan and independent organization that represents 24 federations, 186 business associations, and more than 40,000 companies that are organized sectorally and regionally across Turkey. With that, over to you, Erhan.
No, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. It's also very great to see NGO representatives and UN agency representatives in majority. Also, I am glad that the majority of participants that are answering the questions knows about the business continuity plans, which makes our job very easier. And thank you for making the introduction of my institution. As you said, Turkish Enterprise and Business Confederation. It's an umbrella organization that has federations and associations as members. And I will keep the introduction for my institution for a minute or so, and then I will move on to the business preparedness activities that we are doing. So Turkconfed, as you
Hi,
see,
Erhan. I'm sorry, I just have to interrupt a bit, but your voice is coming in a little faint. So if you could speak a little louder so that the audience can also hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I will increase my noise. I hope this helps. Is that okay now?
Yes, better.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Great. So Turkconfed is a business confederation, as you said. It's a non-profit organization that is catering towards MSMEs mostly. And it's our job to increase their capacity. And what we do in terms of activities is threefold. First is that we develop policies and we lobby for them. And secondly, we develop capacity development programs for MSMEs based on those policies. They could be reports, analyses, and the capacity development can be trainings, mentorship, or financial assistance. And thirdly, we do networking activities, which is also key in all the development regions of Turkey. And our capacity development programs not only is limited to business continuity, but also sustainability, digital transformation, entrepreneurship, youth, and women in employment. So that said, one of the bigger aspects is in the last 4 or 5 years is the business continuity. Business continuity plans, as Fania said, is very key for MSMEs, and it is compulsory to have plans in place in Turkey for any enterprise that are practicing, that are active. But what we see mostly is that the plans are there, but they are usually I will speak openly, they are usually copied and pasted, so they are not read thoroughly, or there are problems with an implementation aspect, as we see more and more that SMEs are not doing drills regularly. We only see some activity after earthquakes, unfortunately, and as you know, Turkey is a very disaster-prone country. We have in our country profile, we have earthquakes, forest fires, floods, and landslides. Our institutions, although deal with forest fires and floods, we mostly prioritize earthquakes. And my institution was set up in 2004. Since 2018, we started getting into business preparedness project with the support of UPS Foundation. And since 2019, Turkconfed is a proud member of CBi. trying to represent the network in Turkey. So starting from 2019, we continued catering towards SMEs in the aspect of business preparedness. It's usually business preparedness as well as recovery after the disaster, because during the disaster and right after the disaster, there's usually a monopoly of state stakeholders, like public stakeholders. They are usually the first ones to intervene. Our job is usually as an NGO to prepare the SMEs prior to any disaster. So we took two different approaches. One is that we tried to empower SMEs, and secondly, we tried to empower civil society in all the regions of Turkey. So in that sense, we started out with a report, overall report of Turkey, the country profile, and then we developed 3 tools for SMEs. One is for them to make an analysis of their current situation right after a disaster. Second, they can do an economic assessment as a report for themselves. It's a ready tool as well. And third is to tell them what to do in crisis and after crisis as business actions. For example, let's say there's an earthquake. Would you turn on the light back on, or would you? When would you go back to producing? That kind of examples are within those tools. And then in 2020, as probably all the institutions are affected, pandemics also affected our project. So we worked on the standardization of personal protective equipment, such as masks or cleaning products for SMEs. So when they're produced in Turkey, they might be included in this list of trusted vendors for exports and public procurement. So they are not returned, so the public can benefit mostly. We also work within Turkey in a horizontal sense. We work with other NGOs. We collaborate with them on numerous projects, such as Sağlam Kobi. They have a great tool on self-assessment, and we are not, refraining ourselves from promoting those as well in our projects. And we test our tools and other tools in collaboration after earthquakes. There were 2 major earthquakes in Istanbul, in Turkey, in the last 3 years. One was Elazığ earthquake, and then the other one was Izmir earthquake. And we tested our tools, which proved to be useful. And then we looked at country examples for the empowerment of NGOs in Turkey. We looked at 7 countries to come up with 3 models for NGOs that can be adopted in the business preparedness level. Those countries include Mexico, Italy, France, Spain, Sri Lanka, Colombia, and Chile. We looked at sectoral NGOs, industrialist NGOs, and regional NGOs, and saw what they do in their country in terms of business preparedness, and offered 3 models for Turkish NGOs. And I'm moving on. The next year, we came up with a earthquake scenario for Istanbul, which is the biggest biggest city of Turkey, making up more than a third of the GDP of the whole country. And we tested out 5 sectors in terms of a Istanbul earthquake scenario, which are logistics, energy, ICT, and insurance and agriculture. So we concluded that it will be a very big problem for Turkey if there was an earthquake upwards of 7.0 in Turkey, and it would result in $300 billion of damages, which would set back the economy for a number of years. And then we didn't stop there. We came up with roadmaps for the for those sectors so that they can survive an earthquake in Istanbul. So, which brings us to the next year. We will continue with developing operational tools for SMEs because the information is very expensive for any SME. Since they lack the resources compared to bigger enterprises, since they lack the personnel, we have to make it easier for them. And we will continue with trainings, mentorships, for business continuity plans. Any SME can come to Turkconfed and say, I have a business plan, but I am not sure if I can implement it, or I don't know how to expand on it. So we provide free mentorship for those. And in the next year, we will distribute emergency action packs. Our team came up with the idea when we are in trainings, we will provide action packs, emergency action packs for SMEs. So hopefully they will not need them, but when they do, they will have some packs. I will stop here. I will be happy to provide more detail in any of the questions. I don't want to overstay my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Erhan. I like how you emphasized a challenge already early on the difficulties in developing BCPs. And I think that cuts across any country or any network. So hopefully later on, we can unpack how we can support our MSMEs in developing their BCPs. Also, your multi-sectoral approach in addressing the challenge. Mentorships also help MSMEs a lot. To have that higher level of business resilience to withstand future shocks. So congratulations on that, Turkconfed. Again, thank you, Fania, Veron, and Erhan for sharing these case studies, wonderful stories and also programs. But at this point, I think our audience might have questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. Hopefully you can answer them. To our audience, feel free to utilize these options, the chat box and the Q&A box. Hopefully, we can have time to answer a few of them later. Otherwise, we will have an after activity mailer where we can include all of these questions with the responses from our speakers today. So there. Now, let me call everyone back on our virtual stage and welcome also to the conversation Ms. Florian Rizaneri, the Network Coordination Specialist for the Connecting Business Initiative, to join us in our panel discussion. So let's bring back our speakers. So Veron, I see you there. Erhan, Fania. Is Fania still here with us? Oh, there. Yes.
Yes, I am.
All right. Hi, Riza. Thanks for joining us. So I'd like to start the discussion by setting the scene and asking Fania, Veron, Erhan, and Riza. You have been engaged, as you've shared earlier, with MSMEs for a very long time now. That's during peacetime and also during disasters. Can you share in 2 to 3 minutes how MSMEs help the community? Or what is the role of MSMEs in the community? We can start with you, Fania, and then Veron, Erhan, and then Riza.
Perfect, Katrina. Thank you very much. I think that MSMEs have a big role into helping the community. They reduce level of poverty through job creation and economic growth in general. They also, we can consider them as key driver for employment, decent jobs, and especially entrepreneurship for women, youth, and vulnerable and groups in vulnerable situation or vulnerable areas. They are also the majority of the world's food producer, and they play a crucial role in closing the gender gap as they ensure women's full and effective participation in the economy and the society in general. Despite, of course, we need to take into consideration also that MSMEs have been hit the hardest when a disaster strikes. And especially in Haiti, that's even worse. And I can also say that MSMEs have a very important role in developing the economy in general of a country, because they help reduce poverty, like I said, with job creation and growing labor force. They stimulate also the economy, development, and most of the rural areas. We can see that in Haiti specifically. Before they identify the risk, they do training and awareness action within their community. And during the emergency, they can inform the community on the alert phase with poster, for example. And so they support the community directly. And also after, they can support in the damage assessment, for example. They can help the communities to recover through various different type of support. So they can train their employees and the community with awareness messages. They also help the community to be more resilient. They train and also with awareness and prevention. During the event, they can also very easily inform and support the community directly. So that's most of the reason why I definitely think that they play a key role in supporting their direct community. Thank you.
Thanks, Fania. Veron, how about you?
Yes, as I mentioned a while ago, the MSMEs are actually the lifeblood in our economy, and it's very important because you will find them in the community. In the Philippines, oftentimes the micro entrepreneurs have their businesses where they also live. No? So they are primarily in the community, and when that community is affected, the state of the MSMEs, whether they can recover fast or not, will actually be the gauge of how that community can recover. So, and another point about MSME, so that's one, MSMEs as part of the community. So immediately when an area is impacted, you will see how fast or slow the recovery is when by observing how the MSME will be recovering or restarting their operations. The next important aspect of the MSME is that they are part of the supply chain and distributions of the big businesses. So as we always say in BCP, you are as good as your weakest link. No? So we have to make sure that they are also robust as far as the resiliency is concerned, to make sure that we minimize the impact to the big businesses which they serve. So this will having MSMEs that are not resilient will actually weaken or have a slow recovery of local economies in disaster-stricken areas. So it's important that we include them in making sure that as the big businesses become stronger, they have to make sure that is the advocacy of the PDRF to make sure that they also take care of their supply chain. So as I mentioned a while ago, one of the pillars that we partner with our member companies is the BCP for their supply chain. Thank you.
Thanks, Veron. Over to you, Erhan.
Well, of course, MSMEs are the backbones of Turkish economy as well. I mean, they are very well able to be, adapt to any situation that are on the ground locally. Excuse me, the phone is ringing. I'm sorry.
Maybe while Erhan is answering the phone, oh, there, he's back. So
I came back, sorry, unexpected. So they are very well versed in adaptability on the ground, and they are the first point of contact in case of an emergency or a disaster. They can report on the ground. And one basic data is that we can measure the number of SMEs that are closed or reopened in the area to measure the impact of a disaster. and the impact on the supply chain. So when the small enterprises are affected, the bigger ones are affected too. I mean, overall, when we talk about SMEs in Turkey, they are very well respected and they are deeply rooted in the community. And the reason for that is that they serve the end user that the bigger enterprises never see. So they are the first point of contact, so to speak. So that's why they are very important to the community.
Thanks, Erhan. And I think joining us in the conversation is Riza from CBi. And I'd really like to know, like, MSMEs are that vibrant, but from a network perspective, or even your work with MSMEs, what else or how else do you see the community playing a role in that overall agenda of resilience?
Thanks a lot, Trina. Now, I won't repeat what Fania, Veron, and Erhan had already said, because they have articulated quite well the importance of small businesses, the backbone for the local economy. So the quicker they can recover, the quicker the local community in terms of economic activity can quickly recover. And for CBi, I would just like to elevate it from a network perspective, that's really the essence why we work with networks of small businesses or local businesses, because we believe that the private sector is among the first to respond during emergencies. And in terms of early recovery, they're always a critical partner in ensuring that the community can also rebuild in a much faster pace. Now, on Erhan's point, on last mile access, this is true. Now, the networks, whenever I talk to CBi member networks all around the world, they always say that the private sector is always willing to help. And you will always see a small business, whether it's in the Philippines, in Turkey, in Haiti, always in a specific area. And wherever you go, so they're always there, and everything you would need, you'll find it offered by a small business, whether in the Philippines called the sari-sari store. So it's always there. That's why it's important that these MSMEs are also supported by a network, so that networks like Haiti, Ajerka, Turkconfed, PDRF are also supporting individual small businesses when it comes to capacitating them in disaster preparedness, response, and even early recovery.
Thanks, Riza. I like how you eloquently already elevated the conversation to a global stage, also identifying key areas where CBi can play a role for this overall bigger or broader agenda. To follow up on the previous question, so this one is for Veron and Erhan. You have been successful in conducting trainings, you've shared that, and you have tools, wonderful tools. Feel free to drop in the resource links in our chat box. But one of which that we would like to know is, behind the curtains, what have been the major challenges encouraging MSMEs to develop their own BCPs? We'd like to hear more of the challenges, because I think based from our initial questions to the audience, this is also something that they are experiencing now. So if you could share your best practices, that would be really fantastic. Over to you, Erhan, and then Veron.
Okay. So I will tell two challenges that we faced, that we are still facing. I think they're also valid for any other work that we do, and probably with many of the NGOs. One is the I call it echo chamber challenge, and it's about communication. When we do a training or mentorship, it's usually the SMEs or NGOs who are coming in that are most interested in it. The rest of the SMEs, they are not very interested in it, so they don't take part in any of the studies. And when it becomes like that, it's a danger of becoming an ecosystem of, people who are already well versed in this area. We are trying to reach to rural areas, to micro enterprises that have basically no idea that they have to do many of the things that we talked about as compulsory. And yet still, it's a big surmountable, it's like a mountain that we have to climb each day for every activity that we have. Second is the, I call it repetition. This, business preparedness and continuity is a lifelong practice. And as I said, I hinted in my previous intervention that it is usually when there's an earthquake or a disaster that, SMEs are, this can happen to me next time. It happened in the neighborhood, city or region, and it can happen to me, so I must be prepared. But after a couple of years, people forget very quickly. That's where we have to come in. Like, it's 2 years past, but it can still happen. You are in an earthquake region or, forest prone region, and there has to be something done continuously. So these are the two challenges that we faced, and frankly, we are still facing those and trying to come up with alternative ideas to overcome. Such as PDRF's, creative ideas like the cartoon character, which I loved, by the way.
Over to you, Veron.
Okay, thank you. Well, two major challenges that we are still facing right now. Number one is still that misconception that BCP is expensive and it is only hard to implement and it is only for the big businesses. So that's one big hurdle that until now, although with all the efforts that we have done, especially in partnership with Department of Trade and Industry, I think we're dent on that matter, but that is still we still observe that a lot. No? We still get a lot of that comments. Another challenge is time to be spent to convince the business owners to attend the BCP training. Because we all know that small businesses, they have to 1 day of not doing business is a big deal for them. So ideally, the BCP training would actually be done in 3 days. But because they don't have, these small businesses cannot afford to go on training for 3 days or send their force or their personnel to a 3-day training. So we had to be very creative about this, no? And Riza is very familiar about this. We had to bring it down to 1.5 days. And then we had to compress it into 1 day, and that is where creativity that came in. So to be able for them to come to a 1-day MSME trainings, we developed the tools. That's why those tools are important. So we can empower them. So we now have a tool, a digital tool, where they can do their pre-work. So they can do that prior to the actual training. And then we also have tools that they can use after the training to make sure that they complete their training. One important activity that we included in our program is the mentorship. So it's really very important. Now we see that a lot of them cannot actually complete their BCP. Either lack of technical know-how, not really technical know-how, but the confidence to finish their plan. So this mentorship program allowed them, gave them confidence to complete it. Now the next step is to test it, because without all these interventions, it will not prosper. They attend the training and then they forget about it, no? Or worse, they don't talk about it in the business, the workplace, and therefore the the vital information is not shared to everybody. So another level, another layer of support that we are thinking about, and this is part of the national roadmap that we do with the National Resilience Core Group, is that it has to be elevated into a policy. So that's one of the important advocacy of PDRF right now, socializing it with Department of Trade and Industry and other sectors to use BCP as a differentiating value, so that the MSMEs will be able to make use of it and really value to BCP. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron and Erhan. I think those challenges, as well as those ways to address those challenges, even in small acts of mentorship or just advocacy and communication, is, I think, relatable to our audience right now, which is why the tools that you've mentioned earlier are definitely something that we can share to them. And hopefully, this course that we are launching later at the tail end of this webinar will also be something that will be useful again for our MSME partners. With that, Fania, if I can turn to you. So we heard about the small and medium enterprises and the challenges that they face. If you could just share, because MSMEs don't really capture headlines, we'd like to hear more, like, how does Ajerka embrace them? Do you have them as members, or do you work indirectly with them? Feel free to share, like, how also does Ajerka support them in the different challenges that they face.
Thank you very much, Katrina, for your question. I can say that Ajerka do support the MSMEs in Haiti, and we do work directly with them. We are actually putting in place a crisis unit, like I said earlier, for many of the MSMEs, members and non-members of Ajerka. And we're doing all that for free for them. And we're also revising for some and implementing for others their BCP since the last few weeks. And we also, of course, have many different workshops all related to DRM that we're doing for the MSMEs in Haiti. So we all know that these companies are the economic drivers of the local economy. And a variety of them, they are in different industry sector. For instance, we have construction, transportation, service, retail, agriculture, finance, etc. So with Ajerka, we help them identify the risks they are exposed to, and we help them prepare themselves to be able to face the risk. For example, in a safety and security visit, which is one of the activities that we do at least once a year for our members, especially, we look, for instance, we look for their extinguisher, we look at their warehouse just to make sure that everything is in place, that the doors, the choice they made, like for the doors, etc., they are good, that everything is in place, like I said, and the whole office in general. And then we share with them like a report, a list of recommendations. So we make sure after a few weeks, we make sure that they do update their business continuity plans, for example. And we surely offer them a workshop also for their employee and sometimes for their immediate community as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Fania, for sharing that. Before I proceed, we have one member of our audience that's raising his or her hand. May I call on Nethmi if you would like to pose your question at this moment. Over to you, Nethmi. So to our tech team, maybe that's just an accident raised hand. So I can proceed now. At this point, I'd like to call Riza, also tying up the ends from your earlier response. There has been a lot of work to bring this agenda up in a global dialogue. So how can we keep up with business continuity? And if you can share best tools or frameworks to start the process of developing BCPs, that would also be fantastic for our audience. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Trina. So I think there are two questions here. So first is, how can we keep up with business continuity? And I think this is more of asking what else needs to be done. So in order for us to keep up with the ever-changing demands for business resilience. And then the next is a question on the best tools and frameworks to start developing BCPs. So for the first one, it's always about multi-hazard resilience. So, and we always know that when it's business continuity, it's always about multiple hazards. But I'd also like to tweak this year's theme for World MSME Day, and happy World MSME Day, by the way. The theme this year is resilience and rebuilding. So I want to also us to reflect that this can also be resilience and remodeling. So it's using BCP activities as opportunities for small businesses to explore how they can transform their business models, creating new products, services, exploring new markets using digital technologies to not just protect critical processes, talk about risks, but also make sure that they are more sustainable, adapted to the current demands. On best tools and frameworks, and again, there are several. There are lots of guidance materials out there, whether it's ISO 22301 or customized quick guides for small businesses. You've heard Veron, Erhan, and Fania talk about their own innovative and creative ways of also reaching out to small businesses. And you'll see that these materials will always have key elements. So it's always about understanding risks, assessing the impacts to enterprises, developing continuity and recovery strategies, plan development and maintenance and testing. But really, what personally I've learned that worked best is not about a specific tool or framework, but on how BCP interventions or activities are programmed or sandwiched even by both policy level interventions. So whether it's chambers advocating for access for MSMEs on risk financing or digital transformation roadmaps, and industry level support to make sure that value and supply chains do not abuse the vulnerabilities of smaller businesses. And I think there's also a comment here about that there are MSMEs. A lot of MSMEs in the Philippines are not formally registered in the Department of Trade and Industry. So how do we protect smaller businesses, those who are not even part of the formal economy when it comes to their engagement within the value and supply chains? And lastly, we heard examples of tools, programs from Ajerka, Turkconfed, PDRF, on how the networks assist SMEs. Their member companies, Ajerkas, SME members of Turkconfed, those who were affected by the Elazığ and Izmir earthquake, and PDRF working with the National MSME Resilience Core Group. So what I would recommend is a best practice that I believe is that lies in BCP programming done by networks like them. And if you want to learn more, I'm going to segue to plugging the course. Do check out the CBi PDRF online course, because I think that's really the focus of this new learning resource. How do you do business continuity programming from the perspective of business networks like PDRF, Ajerka, and Turkconfed?
Thanks, Riza. And the conversation has been really fantastic, and I'd like to go on, but we are already running out of time. So let me just note that after the sharing earlier and then this discussion, it is very clear that we need to highlight that size matters for resilience, no? Especially in the face of lingering challenges, as well as definitely in the context of MSMEs, really zoning into the micro and the small enterprises. And as they are the backbone of our global economy, we have to pay particular attention to the tools and resources that we develop, no, as mentioned by Riza, and provide that for them to be able to respond efficiently and also recover quickly from a crisis. And on that note, I'd like to call on Ms. Nara Hu of the Connecting Business Initiative to also give us an overview of this course that we've been mentioning from the start. This has been developed by PDRF and CBi, and it will be followed by also launching the new learning management system of CBi's website. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Nara. Over to you.
Thank you, Trina. I will give a very short presentation to walk you through of the online course, what's covered in the course, who's the intended audience, how to enroll and earn a certificate, etc. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will address that later after my presentation. So first of all, thank you, dear participants. It's really wonderful to have you join this workshop and the launch of the course on business continuity. And in fact, congratulations, because since you're here, you have already embarked on the learning journey that we prepared for you. Today, you have heard a lot of the best practices for supporting the small businesses from the speakers from our member networks. And later, when you start the course, you will be equipped with the structural knowledge and tools that you need to better prepare your business for crisis. Last but not least, we also encourage you to join our community of business continuity practitioners on our learning platforms and follow us on social media for knowledge sharing and exchanges. In terms of the intended audience, the course is mainly designed for business networks and MSMEs. To be more specific, this course is for you if you're a small business owner and you would like to know more about how you can benefit from business networks, or if you work at a business network and you want to understand how you can support MSMEs. I see that today also many participants are from the NGO, UN, and the government. Actually, this course is also suitable for anyone who wants to familiarize yourself with business continuity concepts and the tools and learn how to implement that in your context. So we do encourage you to share this course with your partners, your MSMEs that you work with as well. Now let's look at the course structure and the learning objectives. In general, the goal of this course, as Risa mentioned, is to explain the business continuity concepts by providing examples and identifying the different ways in which business networks can support MSMEs in their development of business continuity strategies. The course has 4 modules. So in module 1, you will learn about a variety of topics on business continuity, what it is, what it means practically speaking, and why it's important. And the goal of module 2 is to highlight the risks that a small business may face and how a business continuity plan can address and mitigate these risks. In module 3, you will gain an understanding of how small business can develop and implement practical business continuity strategies. And finally, module 4 provides you with the tools and exercises to develop trainings and awareness campaigns to test your business continuity plan, as well as monitor and evaluate your plan. On our platform, the course is listed on the homepage, and to make sure that you have a smooth and engaging learning experience, we also included some key elements and features on the platform. First of all, our subject matter experts have selected some resources and readings for you to boost your knowledge on the topic. I also see that our speakers today have dropped some resources for you on the chat. The course also offers a curated list of resources at the end of each module, and this workshop is also being recorded and will be shared on the course page as part of the learning materials. Secondly, to test your understanding of the content, we have designed the quizzes for each module, so you will be able to earn a badge and download a certificate once you complete all the modules and pass the quizzes with the course. Finally, I also want to mention that the learning platform is mobile friendly, so that you can access this course anywhere, anytime. And I'm now very pleased to share that the online course is live now on our CBi learning platform. You can just go straight to the website and start the course by following the steps showing here on the screen. We have also prepared a FAQ page on the website, which is subject to be updated frequently. So please do check it out. And if you have any questions, please do contact us by writing to connectingbusiness@un.org. We will be more than happy to receive your feedbacks and comments on your learning experiences. Thanks, Trina. Over to you.
Thanks, Tara. At this section, we'll just spend a few minutes. If any of our members in the audience have questions on how to access the learning module or the learning management system, feel free to utilize the chat box also, and also the Q&A box, or raise your hand, and then someone from the tech team will flag that and will call you up on stage, on the virtual stage. So what we're seeing now, Nara, am I right, is the walkthrough for the course.
Yes.
And while people are thinking questions to ask, how long will the course take for you to finish it from the first module to the last module?
So it's a self-paced online course. So it really depends on your learning pace. But in general, we recommend that the participants may take 6 hours to complete all the 4 modules. You can take it step by step, but we do encourage you to have a plan to learn and to interact with other participants and the cohorts so that you can gain more practical experiences from other learners.
Thanks, Nara. And will they receive a certificate after completing the course?
Yes, as mentioned, so the learners will receive a badge and a certificate. The badge can be found on the profile page on the platform, and you will also have a certificate with CBi's credentials, and that's downloadable so that you can share on your social media or with your community of your business continuity practitioners. So that's for sure.
Thank you for that. I think just one more question from my end, and maybe this is a pressing question from our audience. So if I am a small business or a micro level business, and I have a hard time doing a self-paced course, is there an opportunity to have it hybrid, or will CBi and PDRF also conduct hybrid sessions on business continuity planning?
I think in many member networks, for example, in PDRF or in other member networks among CBi family, we do have a lot of business continuity trainings conducted in person. So if a MSE in some certain countries are really interested in this topic and wanted to have the hybrid training, please feel free to reach out to us. We have our contact here and also visit our website so that we can make the connects and we can make the arrangements for that.
That's fantastic, Nara. And I think from our earlier poll question, a lot of our MSME partners will be very interested in the hybrid part, especially if they're just starting out with creating their own BCPs. So to everyone, please watch out for that mailer containing more details on the course itself and on upcoming trainings from any of the CBi member networks. Our team also noted some of the questions from earlier that weren't answered throughout the session. We'll include that in the post-event mailer that we'll send out. At this point, we'd like to formally close our session. May I call on Mr. Butch Maley the president of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. The floor is yours, Butch.
Thanks, Gina. MSMEs are the beating heart of many economies around the world. And I'd like to thank the Connecting Business Initiative for organizing this global webinar. I'd like to thank our speakers from Haiti, Turkey, and the Philippines for their thought-provoking remarks. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of you from around the world for participating in it. Let me end with a quote from someone I admired when I was growing up, US Senator Bobby Kennedy, who said, "We can perhaps remember, even if only for a time, that those who live with us are our brothers, that they share with us the same short moment of life, that they seek, as we do, nothing but the chance to live out their lives in purpose and happiness, winning what satisfaction and fulfillment they can." If there's one thing that we have learned from the pandemic, it's that we are all connected. The men and women who operate small businesses are part of our human family. Let's protect and build up our MSMEs and enable their owners and employees to lead happier, more fulfilling lives.
Thanks, Butch, for that wonderful message. And with that, we close this webinar. Thank you again for those who joined. It was a wonderful session. We were able to unpack a lot of challenges as well as share tools from CBi Member Networks. Again, please watch out for any of the upcoming trainings from CBi or from the member networks themselves. And then thank you. Have a lovely day, everyone.